This 4-year-old beggar girl is abandoned in the rain by her grandmother and screams for help, but a millionaire saw and did something that shocked everyone. Watch until the end. You won't regret it. Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. Rain lashed down on the brick streets of Savannah with a force that seemed determined to wash away all the city's secrets. It was almost 6 in the evening when Harrison Blackwood, 52, adjusted his rearview mirror and sighed deeply. Another exhausting day, overseeing the routes of his trucking company, Blackwood Logistics, which had grown beyond his expectations in recent years. The sound of rain drumming against the windshield created a hypnotic rhythm as he drove through the historic downtown. Harrison was known in the region for his business acumen and a certain aloofness that kept everyone at arm's length. Since losing his wife Eleanor in a car accident 5 years ago, he had built emotional walls so high that even his closest employees couldn't penetrate them. His routine was mechanical: work, home, solitude. The mansion where he lived, inherited from his father, echoed the emptiness of a life that had lost its meaning. As he turned the corner of Broughton Street, something caught his eye. Under the faded awning of an old fabric store, a small figure huddled against the wall. Harrison slowed down, and what he saw made his heart skip a beat. A girl of only 4 years old, with dark hair plastered to her face by the rain, was crying desperately. Her clothes were soaked, and she was trembling as much from cold as from fear. Harrison parked quickly and ran to the awning, ignoring the rain that soaked his expensive suit. "Honey, what are you doing here all alone?" he asked, crouching down to her level. The child looked up, her eyes red from crying, and stared at him with an expression that mixed terror and hope. "Grandma went away," she murmured in a voice so small it was almost lost in the noise of the rain. "She said she'd be back, but it's getting dark." The girl pointed in the direction of City Market, where you could still hear the raised voices of merchants arguing about something. Harrison felt something stir strangely in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. "What's your name?" he asked, taking off his jacket and placing it around the girl's shoulders. "Willow," she replied, and for the first time managed something resembling a shy smile. Willow Bennett. The name echoed in Harrison's mind inexplicably. There was something familiar about it, but he couldn't quite place it. "Willow, I'm going to help you, okay? You can't stay out here in the rain." Without a second thought, he scooped the girl up into his arms and carried her to the truck. During the drive to his house, Willow remained silent, but her large eyes observed everything with impressive attentiveness for a child her age. Harrison noticed how she memorized every street, every sign, every detail of the cityscape passing. By the window, it was as if she were recording everything in her mind with photographic precision. When they arrived at the mansion, Beatrice Abernathy, the 45-year-old housekeeper who had been taking care of the house for 3 years, was shocked to see Harrison coming in with a wet child in his arms. Beatrice was a reserved woman with a perpetually melancholic gaze that concealed deep sorrows. She had lost her own son years ago, in circumstances she preferred not to discuss, and since then had dedicated her life to housework as a form of escape. "Mr. Blackwood, who is this little girl?" Beatrice asked, already grabbing clean towels. Harrison hesitated for a moment, surprised by the lie that came out of his mouth. "She's the daughter of one of my employees. They're going through some tough times, and I needed to help out temporarily." He didn't know why he had lied, but something prevented him from telling the truth about how he had found Willow. Beatrice nodded understandingly and immediately dedicated herself to the child's care. She prepared a warm bath, found some clothes that might fit temporarily, and warmed milk with honey. As she cared for Willow, she felt her heart clenching in a way she hadn't experienced in a long time. The child's presence awakened painful memories in her, but also a maternal instinct that she thought she had buried forever. Willow, in turn, observed everything with her large, expressive eyes. She noticed how Beatrice held back tears as she dried her hair, how Harrison paced nervously around the room, how the big house echoed a silence that seemed to scream loneliness. For a 4-year-old child, she demonstrated a disturbingly keen perception of the emotions of the adults around her. "Where's my grandma?" Willow asked when she was finally dry and warm, sitting at the kitchen table while Beatrice prepared a simple supper. Harrison exchanged a worried look with the housekeeper. "We're going to look for her, Willow. First thing in the morning, we'll go to City Market and talk to people, okay?" The girl nodded, but there was a premature wisdom in her eyes that suggested she understood more about the situation than she let on. That night, while Willow slept in the guest room that Beatrice had lovingly prepared, Harrison couldn't get any sleep. He paced around the living room, questioning the impulse that had led him to bring a strange child into his home. He, who had avoided any emotional involvement for 5 years, had placed himself in a completely unforeseen situation. Across town at City Market, which stayed open late, Constance Bennett, 68, argued heatedly with merchants about debts accumulated over months. Constance was a woman whom life had treated brutally. A widow, dependent on occasional jobs, she carried on her back not only her own difficulties, but also the weight of caring for her granddaughter after her daughter had mysteriously disappeared. "I'll pay, Mr. Johnson, but you gotta give me some time," she shouted at the owner of a produce stand. "The girl's with me, and I can't let her go hungry." But the arguments intensified, and amid the confusion and shouting, Constance simply disappeared between the stalls, leaving behind not only the debts, but also the granddaughter she had promised to pick up. Her mind, worn down by years of struggle and deprivation, had entered a state of denial where running away seemed the only possible solution. Meanwhile, in the silent mansion, Willow woke up in the middle of the night. Her exceptional memory made her perfectly recall every word of the argument she had witnessed between her grandmother and the merchants before being abandoned. She also remembered details that a normal child wouldn't notice: the expressions of despair on Constance's face, the names mentioned during the fight, even numbers that were shouted about debt amounts. She quietly left the room and walked through the halls of the house, admiring the antique furniture and the paintings on the walls. Her mind absorbed every detail like a sponge, creating a complete mental map of the residence. When she reached the living room, she found Harrison still awake, standing by the window, looking out at the rain that continued to fall. "Mr. Harrison?" she called out softly. The man turned, surprised that she was already using an affectionate term. "Can't sleep." "Little one?" he asked, kneeling down to her level. "I'm scared Grandma won't come back," Willow confessed, and for the first time since arriving, let the tears flow freely. She was very angry with the people at the market. They said big numbers, things about money. Harrison was impressed by the accuracy of her observation. "What numbers, Willow?" $350 for the man with the vegetables, $120 for the lady with the spices, and she said she didn't even have $50 in total. The precision of the information left Harrison perplexed. How could a 4-year-old child memorize financial details with such accuracy? At that moment, something clicked in Harrison's mind. Willow wasn't an ordinary child. There was something special about her ability to observe and remember that went far beyond normal for her age. And that discovery made him realize that perhaps he had found not just an abandoned child, but someone who would change his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The rain continued to beat against the windows of the mansion, creating a melancholic symphony that lulled the confused thoughts of a man who thought he had closed his heart forever, and the fears of a girl whose exceptional intelligence would be both her blessing and her curse in the months to come. The first rays of sun that filtered through the curtains of the mansion found Willow already awake, sitting on the bed, observing every detail of the room with her characteristic attentiveness. Beatrice entered discreetly, carrying clothes that she had bought early at the market for the girl. The housekeeper had spent the night thinking about the child, reliving painful memories of her own son, Miguel, who would have been almost the same age as Willow if he was still alive. "Good morning, sweetheart," Beatrice said, with a tenderness that surprised herself. "I brought you some new clothes." Willow smiled, and something in Beatrice's chest warmed in a way she had forgotten was possible. As she helped the girl get dressed, she noticed how she carefully observed every movement, memorizing the sequence of actions as if she were studying a manual. In the kitchen, Harrison was having his usual coffee when Willow entered, holding Beatrice's hand. The sight of the well-cared-for child, with clean clothes and combed hair, awakened in him a strange feeling of completeness that he hadn't felt in years. "Did you sleep well, little one?" he asked, pouring warm milk into a smaller mug. "Yes, Mr. Harrison. The house is very big. There are 42 steps on the main staircase, 16 windows in the front, and the living room door creaks on the third swing," Willow replied naturally, as if it were normal for a 4-year-old child to make this type of detailed observation. Beatrice and Harrison exchanged a surprised look. The girl's accuracy was disconcerting, but also fascinating. Harrison began to realize that there was something genuinely special about Willow's mental capacity, something that went beyond simple good memory. After breakfast, Harrison was preparing to leave when the doorbell rang. It was Evan Carter, 38, the company's accountant for 5 years. Evan was a thin man, always nervous, with thick glasses that hid constantly worried eyes. His dedication to work had been questionable in recent months, but Harrison attributed this to the family problems that the employee had vaguely mentioned. "Mr. Blackwood, I need to talk about the spreadsheets from the last quarter," Evan said, sweating more than the morning heat would justify. "Come in, Evan. Let's go to the office," Harrison replied, but noticed how the accountant's eyes fixed on Willow with a strange expression, almost of recognition. Willow, who was playing silently with a doll that Beatrice had improvised with. Cloths, looked up and stared at Evan with the same intensity. Her photographic memory captured every detail, the sweat stain on the man's shirt, the almost imperceptible tremor in his hands, the way he avoided looking directly at Harrison. In the office, Evan spread papers on the table with nervous movements. "We have some discrepancies in the fuel records from the last routes," he began, his voice faltering slightly. Harrison frowned. "What kind of discrepancies?" "Values that don't match the receipts. It could be a typing error, but—" Evan paused, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Maybe it's best if we review everything more calmly." While the two men discussed numbers and spreadsheets, Willow had quietly approached the office door. Her keen hearing captured every word of the conversation, and her exceptional mind processed information that a normal child couldn't even comprehend. "Evan, are you okay? You seem more nervous than usual," Harrison observed. "It's my mother, sir. The treatment is getting more and more expensive, and I—" Evan interrupted his own sentence, as if he had said too much. Willow memorized not only the words, but also the tone of despair in Evan's voice, the way he shuffled. The papers, without looking at them, the specific numbers that were mentioned during the discussion. After Evan left, visibly relieved to end the meeting, Harrison remained in the office, reviewing the documents. Something was wrong, but he couldn't identify exactly what. His suspicious nature, developed after years of difficult deals and business, Betrayals alerted him to inconsistencies he couldn't yet prove. Beatrice took advantage of Harrison's absence to talk to Willow in the kitchen. "Sweetheart, do you remember your mommy?" she asked delicately. Willow's eyes filled with tears, but she responded with a precision that surprised Beatrice. Mommy had honey-colored hair and wore a perfume that smelled like white flowers. She sang a song about little birds before I went to sleep. She left on a Tuesday morning and never came back. Grandma said she went to a place far away. The detailed and emotionally charged description made Beatrice realize that the girl carried deep traumas, but processed them in an almost adult way. There was a disturbing maturity in her eyes, as if she understood aspects of life that children her age should ignore. "And your daddy, honey?" "I never had a daddy. Grandma always said he didn't want to stay with us," Willow replied with a simplicity that hid a deep pain. During lunch, Harrison noticed how Willow observed everything around her with meticulous attention. She had memorized the house's routine, the schedules of each activity, even the specific sounds that each door made when opened. "Mr. Harrison, why was the man with the papers so nervous?" she asked suddenly. Harrison almost choked on his food. "What man, Willow?" "The one who came this morning. He talked about numbers that don't match and about his mommy being sick. He was very scared." The girl's observation left Harrison perplexed. How had she captured emotional nuances that he himself had noticed, but in a much more precise way? In the afternoon, while Harrison worked in the office, Willow played in the garden under Beatrice's watchful eye. Beatrice began to ask subtle questions about the girl's previous life, trying to understand her situation better. "Willow, do you remember where you lived with your grandma?" "In the blue house near the old church. Grandma always went out to work in rich people's houses and came back very tired. Sometimes she cried in the bathroom, thinking I didn't see, but I heard everything." The accuracy of the memories and Willow's ability to connect emotions with specific situations impressed Beatrice more and more. There was something almost supernatural about the way the girl processed and stored information. In the late afternoon, Evan returned unexpectedly, this time without warning. Beatrice answered the door, noticing his appearance even more desperate than in the morning. "Is Mr. Blackwood in?" he asked, sweating profusely. "He's in the office, but—" Evan brushed past her without waiting for authorization and went directly to the office. Willow, who was playing in the living room, observed the whole scene with her characteristic attentiveness. In the office, the conversation between Harrison and Evan quickly became tense. Willow, strategically positioned near the door, managed to hear fragments of the discussion. "I can't do this anymore, Mr. Blackwood," Evan said in a desperate voice. "Do what, Evan? What are you talking about?" "The numbers, the alterations. She said she knows things about the company that could destroy everything." Harrison stood up abruptly. "Who said that? Evan, explain yourself." But the accountant was already backing towards the door. "I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't have said anything. Forget what I said." Evan ran out of the house, leaving Harrison completely confused and worried. Who was she, and what compromising information could exist about his company? Willow had memorized every word of the conversation, every intonation, every meaningful pause. Her exceptional mind processed the information like a computer, connecting dots that the adults couldn't see. That night, after Willow went to sleep, Beatrice confronted Harrison in the kitchen. "Mr. Blackwood, I need to know the truth about this girl," she said firmly. "She's not the daughter of one of your employees, is she?" Harrison sighed deeply, realizing he could no longer maintain the lie. "I found her abandoned yesterday in the rain. I don't know why I lied, Beatrice. It was an impulse. And don't you think it's strange that she appeared just now when you're having problems with Evan?" Beatrice's observation made Harrison realize something he hadn't considered. Could it be a coincidence that Willow appeared just when his company was beginning to face mysterious irregularities? While the adults tried to decipher the mysteries that were accumulating, Willow slept peacefully in her room. But her exceptional mind continued processing all the information she had collected. During the day, in her dreams, fragments of conversations mixed with memories of her previous life, creating connections that not even she herself yet fully understood. Across town, Constance Bennett observed Harrison's mansion from afar, hidden among the trees. In the park across the street, she hadn't fled out of cowardice, as everyone thought. There was a plan behind her disappearance, a plan that involved secrets from the past and a thirst for revenge that had been growing for decades. Night fell on Savannah, but the mysteries surrounding the lives of everyone involved were only beginning to be revealed. And at the center of it all, a 4-year-old girl with an extraordinary mind unknowingly became the key to unlocking truths that would change everyone's lives forever. 2 weeks had passed since Willow's arrival at the mansion, and the house's routine had completely transformed. The girl had not only adapted to the new environment, but had memorized every corner, every sound, every habit of the residents. Beatrice had discovered that Willow could repeat entire conversations word for word, even reproducing the exact tone of voice of each person. Harrison, in turn, struggled against contradictory feelings. The girl's presence awakened in him a tenderness that he had buried along with Eleanor, but also a growing anxiety about the irregularities in his company. Evan had become even more evasive, always arriving at odd hours and leaving quickly after tense conversations. It was a Thursday morning when everything began to fall apart. Willow was playing in the garden when she saw a woman approaching the gate. Even from a distance, her exceptional eyes captured every detail. Unkempt grey hair, rumpled clothes, a look that mixed determination and despair. "Grandma!" Willow shouted, running towards the gate. Constance Bennett was unrecognizable. The 2 weeks on the streets had taken their toll, thinner, with deep dark circles under her eyes, but her eyes shone with a dangerous intensity that hadn't existed before. Beatrice ran out of the house upon hearing the girl's cry. She found Constance holding Willow through the bars of the gate, whispering things in her ear that the housekeeper couldn't hear. "You must be Willow's grandmother," Beatrice said, approaching cautiously. "We were very worried." Constance raised her eyes, and a cruel smile spread across her face. "Worried? That's interesting, especially coming from Harrison Blackwood's house." The venomous tone with which she pronounced Harrison's name made Beatrice realize that something was very wrong here. "Do you know Mr. Blackwood?" "I know him better than you can imagine," Constance replied, pulling Willow away from her, with a brusqueness that hurt the girl. "And I've come to get what's rightfully mine." Harrison arrived home at that moment, finding the tense scene at the gate. When his eyes met Constance's, he felt a chill down his spine. There was something familiar about that woman, something that awakened uncomfortable memories that he preferred to keep buried. "Harrison Blackwood," Constance said, pronouncing each syllable with disdain. "We finally meet face to face." "Do I know you?" Harrison asked, opening the gate, but remaining in a defensive position. "Your father knew me very well, and he knew my husband too. Anthony Bennett, remember him? He worked for your family for 15 years before being unfairly fired." The mention of Willow's grandfather made everything click in Harrison's mind. Anthony Bennett had been one of his father's trusted drivers, but Harrison was too young at the time of the dismissal to remember the details. He only knew that it had involved accusations of theft that were never proven. "My husband died in misery because of your family's dishonesty," Constance continued, her voice growing in intensity. "And now you want to steal my granddaughter too?" Willow observed everything with her large eyes, memorizing every word, every expression of anger. On her grandmother's face, every sign of discomfort on Harrison's face. Her exceptional mind processed connections that the adults couldn't see. "Mrs. Bennet, please, let's talk calmly," Harrison tried, but she interrupted him abruptly. "Calmly? After 15 days of taking care of my granddaughter without my authorization? After finding out that you have some very interesting problems in your company?" Constance's smile became more cruel. "Yes, Harrison, I know about your difficulties with the IRS. I know about the irregularities that your accountant is trying to hide." Harrison's blood ran cold. How did that woman know about internal problems in his company? And more importantly, what other information did she possess? "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice betrayed his insecurity. "You don't?" Constance laughed bitterly. "Then ask your dear Evan. Ask about the visits he's been making to certain people in recent months. Ask about the documents he's been photographing." Beatrice held Willow's hand tighter, realizing that the situation was getting out of control. The girl, in turn, absorbed every word like a sponge, her photographic memory registering details that would become crucial later. "What do you want?" Harrison asked directly. "Justice," Constance replied, "and compensation for what your family did to mine. $500,000, Harrison. It's little compared to what you've stolen from us over the years." "You're crazy if you think I'm going to give you that amount. Then maybe the IRS would be interested in knowing about certain suspicious financial transactions in your company. Or who knows, the local newspapers might like a story about tax evasion." The blackmail was clear, and Harrison realized that he had completely underestimated the situation. Constance wasn't just a desperate grandmother. She was a woman with an elaborate plan for revenge. "Grandma, why are you talking like that?" Willow asked in her small voice, but loaded with an adult perception that surprised everyone present. Constance looked at her granddaughter with an expression that mixed love and something darker. "Because some men need to pay for what they've done, my girl, and Mr. Harrison is going to help us with that." At that moment, Evan arrived running, out of breath and visibly desperate. When he saw Constance, his face turned completely pale. "Mrs. Bennet, you shouldn't be here," he said, sweating profusely. "Evan, it's good that you arrived," she replied with false sweetness. "I was just telling Mr. Harrison about our collaboration." Harrison looked at his accountant with a mixture of incredulity and fury. "Evan, explain yourself, now." The thin man began to tremble. "Mr. Blackwood, I can explain everything. My mother, the treatment, I had no choice." "Had no choice to do what?" Harrison shouted. "To photograph the company's documents," Evan confessed, breaking down. "She said she knew things about old irregularities and that she could report me if I didn't cooperate. But I only photographed a few papers, I swear." Evan's confession made everything collapse in Harrison's mind. His company, built with so much effort, was being sabotaged from within. And worse, he had brought the blackmailer's granddaughter into his own home. Willow, observing the whole scene, suddenly spoke with disturbing clarity. "Grandma, you weren't at the market arguing about money. You knew Mr. Harrison was going to find me?" The silence that followed was deafening. All heads turned to the 4-year-old girl who had just made an observation that no adult had noticed. "What did you say, honey?" Beatrice asked, kneeling next to Willow. "Grandma left me in that place on purpose. She knew Mr. Harrison goes by there every day at the same time. She said that on the phone with someone the day before." Constance turned livid. "Willow, you don't understand." "Yes, I do, Grandma. You used me to get close to Mr. Harrison, just like you used Mr. Evan." The accusation from a 4-year-old silenced all the adults present. Harrison felt the ground open beneath his feet as he realized that he had been manipulated from the first moment. "Is that true?" he asked, looking directly at Constance. The woman hesitated for a moment before resuming her aggressive posture. "So what if it is? You deserve to pay for what your family did to mine, and if I need to use my own granddaughter to get justice, I will." The coldness with which Constance admitted to having used Willow as a pawn in her revenge game shocked even Evan. Beatrice instinctively pulled the girl closer to her, her maternal instinct fully awakened. "You're not taking that child," Beatrice said with a firmness that surprised everyone, including herself. "Not after what you just admitted. She's my granddaughter. I have legal rights over her." "Rights?" Harrison exploded. "You abandoned that child in the rain to execute a blackmail plan. What kind of grandmother does that?" The argument was escalating dangerously when Willow suddenly began to recite with photographic precision. "Tuesday, May 14th, 9:30 p.m. Grandma said on the phone. "He goes by there every afternoon at 6. I'm going to leave the girl there and he'll have to stop. Rich man always wants to help abandoned child, especially when he feels guilty." Thursday, May 16th, 3:45 p.m. Grandma talked to the man with the glasses. "Stop! Stop talking!" Constance shouted, desperate to realize that her granddaughter had memorized conversations that completely incriminated her. Harrison looked at Willow with a mixture of admiration and horror. The girl's ability went far beyond what he had imagined. She not only memorized information, she organized it chronologically and reproduced it when necessary. "Evan, you're going to the police right now and tell them everything," Harrison ordered. "Everything about the blackmail, about the documents, about this woman." "There won't be time," Constance said with a venomous smile. "I've already sent copies of all the documents that Evan photographed to people very interested in tax irregularities. Tomorrow morning, your company will be at the center of a scandal that will destroy your reputation." The final blow had been struck. Harrison realized that, regardless of what he did now, the damage to his company would be irreversible. Constance had planned everything meticulously, using her own granddaughter as bait and Evan as a tool. But what she hadn't foreseen was Willow's exceptional ability to memorize and process information. The girl had unknowingly become the living archive of the entire conspiracy. While the adults faced each other in accusations and threats, Willow remained silent, but her mind worked furiously, connecting information, organizing facts, instinctively preparing for what she knew would come next. The greatest revelation of all, a truth that would change not only her life, but that of everyone around her forever. The tension in the mansion's garden had reached a critical point when Beatrice made a decision that would change everything. Looking at Willow, who remained silent but clearly processing every word of the discussion, the housekeeper realized that she could no longer hide the truth that she had discovered weeks ago. "Enough!" Beatrice shouted, surprising everyone with her authority. "All of you stop right now!" Constance, Harrison, and Evan turned to her, shocked by the interruption. "Beatrice, this is none of your business," Harrison began, but she cut him off. "Yes, it is my business, because I know who Willow really is." The housekeeper took a deep breath, trembling. "And you've all been fooled by this woman for much longer than they realize." Constance paled. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you're not Willow's grandmother," Beatrice said, taking the girl's hand protectively. "I'm talking about the fake birth certificate I found in your things, Constance. I'm talking about the real identity of this child." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of the wind in the trees. Willow looked at Beatrice with her large eyes, as if she knew that someone was finally going to tell the truth, that she felt but couldn't fully understand. "You're lying," Constance whispered, but her voice trembled. "I'm not. I'm a lawyer, Constance. I used to be a lawyer before I lost my son and became a housekeeper." Beatrice wiped away a tear. "I recognize forged documents when I see them, and more importantly, I recognize a forged death certificate." Harrison stepped closer. Beatrice, explain properly what's going on. Willow isn't Constance's granddaughter. She's the daughter of Marina Bennett, Constance's sister, who died 2 years ago in an accident. Marina had registered Willow with the name of the real father at the hospital, but Constance altered the documents afterward and illegally assumed guardianship. Beatrice's words fell like bombs on everyone present. Willow, with her exceptional memory, suddenly connected fragments of conversations she had heard in recent years, pieces of a puzzle that finally fit together. "My mommy didn't go away," Willow said in a small but firm voice. "Grandma Constance always said she had gone far away, but she's not here anymore, is she?" Beatrice knelt next to the girl, tears streaming down her face. "No, sweetheart. Your mommy is in heaven, but she loved you very much indeed." Constance tried to approach, but Harrison stopped her. "Don't you dare get near her. You don't understand," Constance shouted, desperate. "I took care of her. I protected her. Marina was involved with a married man, a rich man who never claimed his daughter. I had the right to raise the girl." "What man?" Harrison asked, feeling a strange chill. Constance laughed bitterly. "A respected businessman in the city. A man who seduced my sister and then abandoned her when she got pregnant. A man who never knew he had a daughter." Beatrice looked at Harrison and then at Willow, connecting dots that she had suspected for weeks. "Constance, say the name." "Arthur Sterling, the attorney who represents several companies in the region, including," she paused dramatically, "Blackwood Logistics." Harrison felt the world spin around him. Arthur Sterling had been his lawyer for 5 years, since Eleanor's death. He was also his personal friend, someone he trusted completely. "That doesn't make sense," he murmured. "Arthur never mentioned—" "Of course he never mentioned it." Constance exploded. "He didn't even know Marina had died. He didn't even know he had a living daughter. That's why I planned all this, so that he would pay for the responsibility he never assumed." Willow, processing all the information with her exceptional mind, suddenly spoke. "The tall man who comes here sometimes? The one who talks on the phone about important papers?" Harrison nodded, still in shock. "Arthur visited his house regularly to deal with legal matters of the company." "I remember him," Willow continued with photographic precision. "He has a mark on his neck just like my mummy had, a small scar on the left side." Beatrice and Harrison exchanged glances. Willow's observation about specific physical characteristics made the revelation even more convincing. "So, this whole plan," began Harrison, "was to force Arthur to meet his daughter and assume financial responsibility," Constance admitted. "But when I found out that you were friends with him, I realized I could use you as an intermediary. I thought that if Arthur saw you getting attached to the girl, he would feel obligated to tell the truth. But that doesn't justify what you did to me and my company," Harrison shouted. "Your company?" Constance laughed bitterly. "You want to know about your company, Harrison? You want to know why it was so easy to get compromising information about it?" Evan, who had remained silent during the entire revelation, suddenly spoke. "Because Arthur Sterling has access to all the company's legal documents. He advised Mrs. Bennett on exactly which irregularities to look for." Evan's confession was the final blow. Arthur was not only Willow's father, but he had also betrayed Harrison, helping Constance in her blackmail plan. "Arthur knew everything?" Harrison asked, incredulous. "Not at first," Constance admitted, "but when I told him about Willow and showed him the paternity evidence I got through strands of hair she kept from her mother, he panicked. He said he would help with the plan if I promised not to make the paternity public." Beatrice held Willow tighter. "You use this child as a bargaining chip. What kind of people do that?" At that moment, the sound of approaching cars caught everyone's attention. 3 police cars stopped in front of the mansion, followed by Arthur Sterling's car. "I called them," Beatrice said. "When I discovered the truth about the forged documents, I contacted the authorities." Arthur got out of the car, visibly desperate, followed by the police officers. When his eyes met Willow's, he froze completely. The resemblance to Marina was undeniable. The same expressive eyes, the same shape of the face, even the small scar that he had noticed without paying attention on his previous visits. "Daddy?" Willow asked, using her ability to process information to reach the obvious conclusion. Arthur began to cry, all his composure as a respected lawyer collapsing. "Willow, I didn't know. Marina never told me." "You knew for weeks," Constance accused, "and you chose to protect your reputation instead of claiming your daughter." The officer in charge of the operation approached. "Mr. Harrison Blackwood, we received a complaint about document forgery and blackmail." Beatrice stepped forward. "Officer, I have all the necessary evidence. Forged documents, records of blackmail and witnesses to the whole scheme." While Constance was arrested for document forgery and extortion, and Evan testified as a cooperating witness, Arthur hesitantly approached Willow. "Can you forgive me for not having been here before?" he asked, kneeling down. Willow studied him with her penetrating eyes for a long moment before responding. "Mommy used to say that sometimes people make mistakes, but the important thing is to try to fix them afterward." The girl's response, loaded with a wisdom that went beyond her 4 years, made Arthur cry even more. But it was Harrison who made the decision that surprised everyone. "Arthur, you're her biological father, but I want to adopt her officially." Harrison. "No," he interrupted. "You had your chance and chose fear. I choose love. Willow has transformed my life, taught me to feel again. She's my daughter now, regardless of blood." Beatrice smiled through her tears. "And I want to be her legal godmother. I want to use my legal knowledge to protect her always." Arthur nodded, recognizing that, despite being the biological father, Harrison and Beatrice had become Willow's true family. 6 months later, the adoption was finalized. Harrison had completely restructured his company, implementing transparent practices that made it a model in the region. Evan, after completing community service, had been rehired and had become an exemplary employee. Arthur maintained regular contact with Willow, but respected Harrison's role as her adoptive father. Constance had been sentenced to 2 years of house arrest with community service, but most importantly, she had been forced to undergo psychological therapy to deal with her traumas and thirst for revenge. On a sunny afternoon, Willow was playing in the garden of the mansion, now officially her home, when Harrison approached. "Willow, do you remember when we met?" he asked. She smiled, using her photographic memory. "You stopped the car at 6:07 p.m. on a rainy Thursday. Your eyes were sad, but you picked me up anyway. That's when I knew I had found my new daddy." Harrison picked her up, moved. "And did you know you were going to change my life completely?" "Yes, I knew, Daddy. Special people always recognize other special people, even when they're lost in the rain." Beatrice joined them in the garden, looking at the family that had formed through so much suffering and so many revelations. Willow had not only found a home, but had transformed the lives of everyone around her with her exceptional intelligence and her ability to see the truth where adults saw only lies. On that golden afternoon in Savannah, a 4-year-old girl with a photographic memory rested in the arms of her adoptive father, protected by a godmother who had rediscovered her purpose in life, knowing that her exceptional intelligence would now be cultivated in an environment of true love and emotional security. The storm had passed, and finally everyone had found their place in the world. If you liked this wonderful story, please comment. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.